Hello again, music theory crew. Hello again, music appreciation crew. I'm here on Monday sending you our next PowerPoint presentation. This one's on classical forms, or the musical forms we'll encounter during the classical era, which we first dove into with our discussion on Haydn, which I released last, I think it was Friday, but maybe Thursday. You'll see a few links through this presentation. I'm going to include most of these links in the message I send out over live grades. Feel free to go on and listen to these videos. They're really informative, but they're not entirely necessary for you to grasp an understanding. I'm going to show you everything you'll really need to know right through here. So we discussed form at the beginning of the year, and we decided that form is a way of ordering things in music. So we think about form like in the form of a speech, would be the order in which a speaker presents a series of ideas. So like an outline almost. The form of a musical work or movement is just the same thing. It's the order in which a composer says things or musical ideas. So why do we even need form? Well, in literature, a form is the framework for telling a story. While that content may change, the framework typically remains the same with respects given to specific genres. So when we think of classical music, we have several different frameworks that composers composed within, and all of that music was different, but they all, with respect to different, formatic genres, they all had the same exact framework, even though we may have thought, this sounds very, very different. So an example I like to use for form is the whodunit mystery, and my easiest way to think about it is through the Scooby-Doo episode. I think this is how we first introduced form back in August or September. So with your Scooby-Doo episode, you're going to always have a crime, and that crime tends to change, but you always have a crime to start things off. Well, then you're going to have, your investigators show up, and that's going to be the mystery crew there. And then you're going to be looking for clues. And Scooby-Doo even kind of goes further with this by saying things like, you can always guarantee that there's going to be a Jinkies by Velma, and you can always guarantee that Velma's going to lose her glasses at some point. You can always guarantee that when they split up, Fred and Daphne are going to go the same way, and then Scooby and Shaggy are going to be really scared, but they're going to offer them Scooby snacks to get them to do something a little bit more brave. So all of that happens in like the clue phase of this. Then they tend to gather suspects, and maybe one of these suspects is wrong and one of these suspects is right, and so on and so forth. And then they come up with a solution. And the solution is always unveiling the monster to be just some regular guy. And then, in every Scooby-Doo episode, the guy says, and I would have gotten away with it too if it weren't for you meddling kids. And that's the end of it. So we have a clear form, but despite the fact that every Scooby-Doo episode and every murder mystery is set up the same way, with the same framework, we still watch those episodes, and if you were like me as a kid, you probably watched hours upon hours of them, just because we found it interesting. It was different but the same, and we enjoyed the framework so much that it was really appealing to us. So now when we think about musical form, we tend to express these in letters. So if you have an AA form, that would just be a straight repetition. That would be like saying hello, then hello. All right, no difference. It's completely the same. You have an A, then what we call an A prime, which is that A with an apostrophe on it. That's a variation. That's like saying hello and then hi. So the ideas are the same, but the words aren't exactly precise. So we can do that in music by just changing maybe a few notes or maybe varying a rhythm a little bit. With contrast, we have A and B. That would be an A-B form, and you would say hello and then goodbye. The two ideas are very different from one another. There's no mistaking the one for the other. They're completely separate. So one of our classical forms is called the rounded binary form. And if we think of this in letters, it would be like A, then B, and then A. So we have a first section or a first reprise, then we have a second section or a second reprise, and then we go back to that first section, making it round its way out, which is why we call it rounded binary form. In classical music, we see this take the name of minuets. So there's a minuet proper, which is the first rounded binary form unit. Then there's the trio, which is the second rounded binary form unit. Haydn's Symphony No. 43 in E flat major is a pretty good example of this. So let's see if I can get this to play here. So we listen here. This is the first reprise, and we're just about to restart it right now. So there's the repeat at 10 seconds in. Now we're going to go to a whole new thought. So this would be your B section. If you listen carefully, you'll hear this return right now to A. So that was an example of the rounded binary form. So why is form even necessary? Well, in literature, framework remains constant and predictable while content varies, just like we talked about with the Scooby-Doo episode. This helps authors and readers alike. Basically, it's kind of like a production format. You know, if we were reinventing the wheel every single time we compose, it would be really, really tough. Pop music does this. I mean, we've listened to countless examples of music for our music listening, and we could quantify most pop music or qualify most pop music into that verse chorus form because they know that that's what sells. So why try to change it? The same really holds true for musical forms. When we know the form, we can better follow a progression and truly appreciate how the composer or author has applied it, as musical thinkers, that is. So it really just helps everyone to kind of stick with these forms. So specifically, I'd like to talk now about the sonata form. The sonata form is a conventional framework that was used widely in the classical era that allows a composer to tell a real musical story. There are 3 distinct sections in every single sonata. Probably one of the most famous sonatas that you guys know of is the Moonlight Sonata by Beethoven, which I encourage you to go listen to. It's not in this presentation, but it's still a good one. So your first section in a sonata is called the exposition. It introduces all the main themes and the keys of the piece. What I would like you to think about here is thinking about characters, maybe from your favorite TV show. I'm going to use The Wizard of Oz, but the characters and the locations when they begin an episode of a show or when they begin a movie. It starts in primary or home key and moves to a closely related key. So we're starting at home and we're not really moving far away from home. Then we go to the development section of the sonata, and this takes the themes that were introduced during the exposition and puts them through really complicated patterns and different keys, but it always avoids home. So basically you're going anywhere but home, and you're going through a whole slew of different things. And then you finally have the recapitulation, which brings all the themes or the characters back home and resolves the plot of the entire movement or the entire piece. So exposition starts at home, development takes you really far away from home, recapitulation finds your way back to home. Think about this in The Wizard of Oz. So let's say The Wizard of Oz is our sonata, and we're thinking about the exposition. So our exposition begins at the farm, at home, and that would be our tonic or home keys. So the tonic or home key is the farm or the house. The characters or the themes that we introduce are Dorothy, the 3 farmhands, which, as we know, will later turn into the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, and the Lion. And then, of course, Mrs. Gulch, who was, you know, the Wicked Witch. She was the old lady that rode the bicycle at the beginning of the movie. So then we continue with our exposition. Dorothy decides that she is going to leave the farm. She's going to run away from home, and she's going to go to a new location. The new location is down a road where she met Professor Marvel, who was the fortune teller and had the hot air balloon, and who ended up being, you know, the wizard. This new character corresponds to the new theme, but they're still not that far away from home. They're still in Kansas, basically. They've just moved to a new place. Then we go to the development, which is where most of this movie takes place. This is Oz. This is the bulk majority of our movement, our movie, our song, our piece. The characters or themes from the exposition, though transformed, are still recognizable from when we first met them. So what that means is you know, there's a Tin Man, there's a lion, there's a scarecrow, but we still recognize that those were just the farmhands from the beginning of the movie. They're just wearing a whole lot of different costumes, and they're acting a bit differently, but we still know that they're the same people, even though that it's a different setting. So different, yet still somewhat the same, but we are definitely 100% not in Kansas anymore. Then we get to the recapitulation, which is, you know, when Dorothy clicks her feet together, and then all of a sudden we're back home and we're laying in the bed, and all the major characters return as they originally were in the exposition. And it's a sonata form movement then. We have come back home, everything is recapitulated, and everything's presented in the original location or the tonic key. So right here, you can take a look here. I pretty much have explained to you everything this chart says, but this is the Wizard of Oz Sonata chart that I found. It kind of explains musical movements or musical happenings, occurrences on the left side with the sonata form, the musical drama that's occurring, and how that corresponds to the Wizard of Oz. So now I'm going to play for you more of the musical side of things. This is Johann Christian Bach's Sonata in D major. I've got a table on the next slide here that'll help you kind of follow along. The link is just to this piece if you would like to go listen to it, but I'm going to play it on my phone here, and hopefully the audio isn't too bad for you to listen. So we're going to go ahead and get started. See if you can follow along here. I've got everything marked for you there so you can kind of identify it, but here we go. Now we're coming up on 15 seconds, so this is the transition section we're talking about. Now this is a whole new theme, but it's still in the key area. So we've moved to Professor Marvel, but we're still in Kansas. We're coming up on 1 minute and 16 seconds, which is going to be a direct repeat of the exposition. So now it's just like we started all the way back over at the beginning. We're at 0 seconds now. And there's that transition again. Here's the second theme. You're about 25 seconds away from going into development. Here's the development. This is where we're going through a whole bunch of different keys. We're now in Oz. And now, finally, we are back to the recapitulation. You can hear it sounds just like the beginning. And we'll end the same way we began, and that's how you can identify a sonata. And normally, the composer will say this is a sonata in blank major or blank minor. So I encourage you to go check out, maybe Moonlight Sonata, or maybe one of your favorite sonatas that you've heard before, or one that you haven't heard, and try to figure out where the exposition, development, and recapitulation lie. Yeah, if you guys need anything, just send me a message. As always, I am here for you guys. I hope you all are doing well and staying safe and staying in. And if you need to reach out, you can get a hold of me through live grades or my email. I look forward to hearing from you. Let me know if you have any questions, and stay safe.